Cameras were still rolling, guests waiting for my vows, when I lifted the microphone and said, "I'm not just a bride today. I'm a witness to the truth. My fiancé, Joshua, never loved me. I was a cover for his public life in the church." The room held its breath, the vineyard terrace, the string lights, the rented perfection of a Willamette Valley Saturday. Somewhere a fork chimed against a plate. Someone coughed, then forgot how. Behind the arbor draped in eucalyptus, the hills of Oregon had the nerve to stay beautiful while my life pivoted on a single sentence. You don't get to that sentence out of nowhere. An hour earlier, the world was still arranged like a catalog photo. The winery's barn-turn ballroom smelled like oak and stone and new linen. My dress, ivory crepe, clean lines, hung right on my shoulders. My mother, Susan, pinned a small blue ribbon into the seam and kissed my temple. "For luck," she said, the way practical women talk when they don't believe in luck but do believe in effort. My dad, Mark, checked the forecast for the 6th time and pronounced the wind cooperative. Claire fussed with my hair. Natalie hid tissues in her bouquet, and every mirror told me the same story. Emily Carter, English teacher, 28 ready. Joshua was the kind of person who made people stand taller around him. A gifted organizer, a magnetic speaker, the face of 3 service projects and a dozen photographs in the church newsletter. He'd grown up in the valley, learned to say everyone's name like a blessing, could fold a chaired meeting into a song. The elders called him a future. Parents called him safe. He was the man little kids ran to and donors trusted. I'd fallen for the steady, for the gentle, for the way he asked about my students and actually listened to their poems. But that morning, he was not steady. I noticed it first when the photographer asked him to turn his collar and his hands missed the button twice. Then when the florist brought in boutonnieres and he said thank you without seeing them. The rehearsal had gone perfectly the night before. Now he seemed to be rehearsing how to breathe. "Josh," I said in the little prep room the winery uses as a bride's lounge, all white shiplap and polite chairs. "Look at me." He did, for half a second, in that way people do when their eyes are only visiting. "We're okay," he said, and the words sounded like borrowed furniture. "I'm just the good kind of nervous." "I teach 9th graders," I said. "I can tell the kinds apart." Claire shut the door and took her maid of honor magic somewhere else. It was just the 2 of us, and the clock, doing its simple job on the wall. "Tell me," I said. He swallowed. I had never noticed how loud a swallow could be. "It's going to make everything worse." Not telling me already did. He sat. I stayed standing because my knees didn't trust my heart. There's a look people get when they're about to lay down a burden and set fire to your house. He had it. "Emily," he said, and even my name sounded like a request. "I don't want to lie to you anymore." I thought of 300 tiny choices we'd made together since December, tastings, a band, napkins that matched the sky. "Then don't." He stared at his hands like they might decide for him. "I'm gay." The word didn't echo. It didn't shatter glass. It just sat between us with the honest weight of a full suitcase. I had always believed I was prepared for honesty in any form. That truth, however strange, was a kind of mercy. Mercy, I learned, also hurts. "You're sure?" I heard myself say, and it was not suspicion, not accusation, just the last teacherly reflex left in my body. Check the thesis. "Yes." "How long have you known?" "Always," he said, then shook his head. "No, not always. But long enough. Long enough to know I couldn't carry both things forever." Both things. The words tugged at a thread I'd been ignoring. The beautiful fiancé, the spotless resume, the youth retreats, the donor breakfasts, the old ladies who touched his sleeve and called him such a good boy. In my classroom, we underlined motifs. In my life, I had walked right over one. "So what is this?" I asked, and my voice was steadier than I felt. "What am I?" He closed his eyes like a man bracing for surf. "You're the person everyone would believe I loved." I don't remember sitting, but I did. The chair's edge pressed into the backs of my knees like a reminder not to fall. Across the room, my bouquet looked like it belonged to someone kinder than this moment. Out the window, guests were taking their seats, the officiant, Pastor Elaine, testing her mic with words about joy. "You asked me to marry you," I said, almost conversationally, because rage is a luxury and shock is tidy. He stopped, restarted. I wanted the church to stay simple. I wanted my life to keep working. I told myself it would be kind. To everyone. To everyone but me, I said. It came out gentler than he deserved and truer than either of us wanted. To everyone but me. He nodded, eyes wet, jaw fixed. I am sorry. Sorry is a blanket that doesn't cover the feet. I held it anyway. So we cancel, I said. We asked the manager for a microphone. We tell the truth. Panic flickered across his face, quick and bright. Emily, please. There are elders out there. Families. Kids. You know how people talk. It could ruin everything. You mean you're everything. I wasn't cruel. I was tired. You've been asking me to carry a version of you. I can't carry it onto a stage. He stood too fast. The chair tipped and righted itself by a miracle of physics. If you could just get through today. No. I surprised us both with the calm of it. No. We sat inside a small weather system that refused to move off the coast. The clock said 48 minutes to ceremony. My phone lit with a text from my mom. You good? I typed back, I will be. It was not a lie. He tried again, softer. I don't want to hurt the church. I thought of my students and their essays about bravery, the ones who had written to me privately about who they were and who they weren't, and how every single one of them had asked for the same thing, to be allowed to exist without having to stage it. The church, I said, isn't a hallway you sneak through. It's supposed to be a room with lights on. He looked older when he looked back up. What are you going to do? The answer arrived like a steady hand on my back. Tell the truth. Out on the terrace, the music shifted to preludes. Claire knocked lightly and slipped in to fix a bobby pin that had never mattered less. She read our faces in 1 second and didn't ask. We're lining up, she said. You want water? I want a microphone, I said. She exhaled like a blessing. Okay. We walked to the edge of the day we'd been building for months. Susan pressed my fingers. Mark squeezed my shoulder. The coordinator, all smiles and clipboards, whispered cue words that belonged to a different play. Pastor Elaine met my eyes and, because she is good at her job and better at being a person, said quietly, There's room for truth if you need it. The processional happened because muscle memory is stronger than chaos. Children did their job with petals. Friends did their job with flowers. Joshua did his, standing under the arbor, every inch the man people wanted. I felt the camera crews floating at the edges, hired by parents who liked mementos, lenses open like patient faces. I reached the front and didn't take his hands. Pastor Elaine looked at me, then at Joshua, then at the long blue Oregon afternoon holding its breath over Vineyard Rose. She said the sentence she always says, Who gives their blessing to this union? My father answered by name. Then she asked us to speak. I took the mic. Somewhere in the back, a chair scraped. Somewhere to my left, a child laughed at the wrong time and was hushed. I could feel the bridesmaids' held breath and the groomsmen's shifting weight. I could see, beyond the rows of family and church and neighbors, the table where we were supposed to sign the license and the basket where people would drop cards full of wishes for a future that didn't exist. My name is Emily, I said, because beginnings matter even at the end. I teach English at Lincoln Middle. I believe in stories that tell the truth. I looked at Joshua and didn't flinch. And I won't tell one that isn't. That's the part you already know. The sentence that split the air, the one I will not unsay. What happened after, what I did with the recording, who I sent it to, the letters I wrote and didn't, would come in the hours that followed, in the steady, chosen aftermath. But first there was this, the vineyard, the cameras, the light, and a woman keeping her own promise when the one she planned to keep was taken off the table. When the words left my mouth, the vineyard went silent. Even the cicadas seemed to pause, as if the world wanted to hear whether I would take them back. But I didn't. I stood in my own dress, holding the mic with steady hands, and repeated, This marriage isn't real. I won't live as someone else's cover. A wave moved through the rows of white chairs. Some guests gasped, others murmured. My students' parents, invited out of small-town courtesy, stared with the same stunned eyes I'd seen on children who realized a fairy tale wasn't ending the way they'd expected. Joshua froze beneath the arbor. His practiced smile had already vanished, but now the mask collapsed entirely. His lips parted as if he might deny it, or spin a story, but no words came. He looked out at the crowd, then at the cameras, and finally back at me, eyes pleading for silence I would not give. Pastor Elaine, to her credit, didn't interrupt. She simply lowered her hands, stepping back as if to grant me the floor. The guests leaned forward, waiting for me to go on. My throat burned, but I forced the next sentence out. 4 months, Joshua has asked me to play a role to help him look like the perfect man for the church. I believe it was love, but an hour ago he told me the truth. He doesn't love me. He never has. I didn't say the other word. I didn't label him, didn't use the confession he'd given me as a weapon. That part of his truth wasn't mine to declare. What was mine, the lie I had been living, was enough. Someone in the third row dropped a program. It slapped the floor like punctuation. The cameras, still rolling, caught every flicker of Joshua's expression. Later, when I replayed the footage, I would see the exact moment his ambition cracked and the weight of honesty landed on his shoulders. I handed the microphone back to Elaine. "That's all," I said, voice flat. Then I turned, walked down the aisle alone, and left my bouquet on the steps. Outside, the Oregon sky was absurdly blue, the vines stretching endless and green. Behind me, chaos unfurled, guests whispering, organizers scrambling, family members half rising, half hesitating. Claire hurried after me, heels sinking into the gravel. "Emily!" she called. "Wait!" I didn't. I walked to the dressing room, shut the door, and finally let my chest collapse into sobs that had waited too long. Claire followed, holding me until the storm passed. "You did it," she whispered. "You told the truth. The truth tasted bitter and clean." "They'll hate me," I said. "Some will," she admitted. "But others will know you saved yourself." Minutes blurred. I don't know who dismissed the guests or how the reception unraveled. By the time I returned, half the chairs were empty. My parents were waiting near the gate, my mother's face pale but proud, my father's hand resting steady on her shoulder. "We're going home," he said. "You don't need to explain anything. We're proud of you." That sentence, the one I had dreaded never hearing, broke something loose in me. For the first time all day, I let myself believe I hadn't just ruined my life. I had salvaged it. Joshua tried to reach me before I left. He caught up near the parking lot, jacket wrinkled, eyes raw. "Emily, please," he said, low enough that only I could hear. I wasn't ready for it to come out like this. "You've destroyed me." I stopped, keys cold in my hand. "No, Joshua. You destroyed yourself the moment you asked me to live a lie." His mouth opened, but he had no reply. He turned away, shoulders bent, a man suddenly smaller without the crowd's belief to lift him. The ride home was quiet, just the hum of tires and the occasional sniffle. My mom held my hand in the back seat like I was still her little girl. My dad drove with both hands fixed at 10 and 2, the way he always did when life demanded focus. That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom scrolling through messages. Dozens had already come in. Sympathy, shock, disbelief. A bridesmaid texted, "You're the bravest person I know." A church elder's wife wrote, "I can't believe it, but I'm praying for you." And then, buried between them, a message from one of my students' parents. "Thank you for showing our kids that telling the truth matters, even when it costs everything." I cried harder at that than anything else. Because maybe, just maybe, the story wasn't only about me. Maybe it was also about every person who had ever been told to play along with a lie. I fell asleep with my phone on my chest, the scent of lavender drifting through the open window. The wedding dress hung in the corner like an abandoned costume. Tomorrow, I knew, would bring more fallout, calls from the church, questions from friends, maybe headlines in the small-town paper. But tonight, for the first time in months, I was no longer pretending. And that was its own kind of freedom. By Monday morning, the story was already moving faster than I could keep up. The wedding guests had carried it into their homes, and by Sunday night half the congregation already knew something had gone wrong. By breakfast, they knew exactly what. The golden boy of Riverbend Church had been left standing at the altar because his fiancé had taken the mic and said the words no one ever expected. I didn't leave my parents' house that day. Mom brewed pot after pot of coffee, as though caffeine could shield us, while Dad fielded the phone calls, answering most with a gruff, "She's not available." Claire came by with a bag of bagels and sat cross-legged on my bed, scrolling through her phone. "You've got to see this," she said, tilting the screen. The video. Of course someone had posted it. It wasn't cinematic, Shaky footage from a cousin's phone, the wind catching the microphone just as I lifted it. But the words were clear enough. I'm not just a bride today. I'm a witness to the truth. My fiancé never loved me. I was a cover for his public life in the church. The clip had already been shared dozens of times. Comments ranged from brave to humiliating to she just ruined his ministry. Claire frowned. It's spreading fast. I pressed my palms together, steadying myself. Good, I said, though my voice shook. If I kept it hidden, I'd just be another part of the lie. By noon, Pastor Elaine called. Her voice was calm, professional, but underneath it I could hear the strain. Emily, I want you to know I'm praying for you. What you did was unexpected. The elders are asking questions. About me? I asked. About Joshua, she admitted. But some feel you should have handled it privately. Privately. That word stung. Privately was how secrets survive. I couldn't, I said, and my voice hardened. Not when the whole town had already been invited to watch us pretend. There was a pause. Then, I understand. And I want you to know I admire your courage. The call ended, but the echo stayed. Courage didn't feel like what I had. Courage belonged in textbooks and sermons. I only felt hollow and tired. That evening, Joshua texted me. Please, Emily, take it down. Or at least tell people you exaggerated. I can't face the pastors this way. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Finally, I typed back, the truth doesn't belong to you alone. It belongs to everyone you misled. Then I blocked his number. An hour later, I opened my laptop and found the video again. Watching myself speak was surreal. My hair lifted by the breeze, my voice steadier than it felt inside me. And behind me, Joshua's face, caught forever in that moment of exposure. My hands shook as I clicked share. I typed a short caption. Truth should never be a performance. It should be a life. Then I hit send, tagging every church leader's email address I had saved. The message delivered. A piece of me trembled with fear, but another part, the deeper part, felt strangely calm. Because now the truth couldn't be stuffed back into silence. It was out in the open, and it would have to be faced. Mom knocked on the door. Yeah. She peeked in, holding 2 mugs. Hot chocolate. You look like you could use something sweeter than coffee. I took the mug and smiled weakly. Thanks, Mom. She sat beside me on the bed. I know it feels like your life just ended. It does, I whispered. But maybe, she said gently, it just started. I leaned against her shoulder, letting the warmth of the cup steady me. Downstairs, my phone kept buzzing with new messages, each one another ripple in the storm. But for the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel like an actress in someone else's play. I was Emily Carter, teacher, daughter, woman who told the truth when it mattered. And whatever came next, it would be mine to live. By midweek, Riverbend was no longer just my town. It felt like a stage with too many spotlights pointed at me. Every time I stepped outside, whether it was for groceries, a walk, or just to breathe, I felt eyes following me. Some were sympathetic, some curious, some sharp as glass. The church elders had called a special meeting. I wasn't invited, of course, but word travels fast in a place where Sunday is the busiest day of the week. Claire's mom, who sang in the choir, texted me afterward. Half the room wants to protect Joshua. The other half wants answers. Elaine defended you. I stared at the message until my chest ached. On Thursday, my principal pulled me aside after last bell. Emily, she said, lowering her voice, I want you to know the school supports you. But parents are talking. Some think this should have stayed private. There was that word again. Private. As if my humiliation would have been cleaner behind closed doors. I didn't choose to be deceived in public. I told her. But I chose to end it in public. That's the difference. She nodded, though I could see in her eyes the worry of someone managing a scandal she didn't ask for. Take tomorrow off. Rest. You've carried enough this week. Rest wasn't what I found. That night, I opened my inbox to dozens of messages. Some were kind. You're brave. You deserve honesty. We're praying for you. Others cut deep. You embarrassed him. You've ruined his ministry. God hates divorce before it starts. I read them all, let the words bruise me, then closed the laptop. Dad found me at the kitchen table, staring into nothing. He set down a mug of tea. When I was your age, he said. I thought being respected meant never upsetting anyone. Took me a long time to learn that sometimes respect grows in the cracks left by truth. I wanted to believe him, but belief is heavier when the whole town seems balanced against you. On Saturday, I decided to go back to the vineyard, not for closure, but to see the place without the storm. Claire drove me, her car humming down the Tulane Road, fields stretching green on either side. The winery staff recognized me immediately, but instead of pity, their faces carried something gentler. The coordinator, the same woman who'd handed me tissues on the wedding morning, pressed my hand. I've worked 100 weddings, she said softly. Most are perfect only on the surface. You gave people the truth. That's rarer. Her words clung to me as I walked across the empty terrace. The arbor still stood, eucalyptus long since dried. The floor where Joshua had frozen was just stone again, cool under my shoes. I closed my eyes and breathed. It smelled of grapes and rain, not betrayal. That night, back home, I sat at my desk with a notebook. For the first time since the ceremony, I began writing. Not a diary, not a complaint, but a lesson plan. I imagined my students in the fall, wide-eyed and curious. Truth in literature isn't always pretty, I would tell them. But it is always the point. Maybe, just maybe, I could use my own story as a quiet example, not of scandal but of courage. Before bed, I checked my phone one last time. A single new message blinked at the top. It was from Pastor Elaine. Emily, I know this has been brutal, but please remember, you didn't destroy anything. You revealed what was already broken. That takes strength most people only talk about. I set the phone down and whispered the words back to myself. I didn't destroy. I revealed. For the first time all week, I slept without dreaming of cameras or whispers. Because the truth, however heavy, was finally mine to carry, and mine alone. The next week was a map of divided loyalties. In a town like Riverbend, news doesn't just spread, it takes sides. At the grocery store, one woman brushed past me without a word, her cart rattling like judgment. 2 hours later, another stopped me, eyes shining, and whispered, "Thank you." My sister lived a lie for 10 years before she had the courage to walk away. You saved yourself sooner. It was like that everywhere. One cold shoulder, one warm embrace. At first I tried to count them, tallying whether I had more allies or critics, but soon I gave up. Respect isn't a vote. It's a mirror you choose to carry or set down. Joshua, meanwhile, had gone quiet. He stopped calling, stopped texting. Rumor said he'd taken leave from the church, citing personal reasons. Another rumor said the elders were splitting, half demanding he step aside, half wanting to shield him. I didn't gloat. I didn't cheer. I only sat with the ache of knowing the truth had cost him the mask he wore and me the future I thought I had. Claire kept me afloat. She showed up with pizza on Tuesday, wine on Thursday, flowers on Saturday. "This isn't penance food," she joked as she set down a box of brownies. "This is survival food." We sat on my porch, the summer night humming with crickets, and for once I let myself laugh. At school, the principal pulled me aside again. "Some parents are worried about distractions," she admitted delicately. "Do you want me to resign?" I asked. My voice was steady, though my heart tripped. "No," she said quickly. "I want you to keep teaching. The kids need to see that life doesn't end when things fall apart." Her words were a gift, small but solid. I tucked them into my chest like a stone I could hold when the air got thin. By Friday, letters began arriving in the mail. Handwritten, folded carefully. Some anonymous, some signed. "I admire you. You embarrassed him. You did what I never could. I hope you can forgive." Each one was a fragment of a town's conscience, delivered to my doorstep. I read them all, even the cruel ones. Not because I wanted to, but because pretending they didn't exist felt too much like the life I'd just left. On Sunday, I went back to church for the first time. My parents walked beside me, shoulders squared, as if daring anyone to whisper. The sanctuary was hushed, the air heavy with expectation. Pastor Elaine met me at the door, her hand warm on mine. "You belong here," she said simply. And somehow that was enough. The service was about forgiveness, about how light reveals what darkness hides. I didn't miss the irony. But as the congregation sang, I felt something stir. Not triumph, not vindication, but a quieter strength. A sense that survival wasn't just about standing apart, it was about standing at all. Afterward, a teenager from the youth group lingered by the steps. She looked at me with nervous eyes and blurted, "Thank you for saying it out loud. I think I needed to hear that." Then she hurried off before I could respond. My heart clenched because I knew. She wasn't talking about weddings or broken vows. She was talking about truth itself. That night, I sat at my desk again. This time, I didn't write lesson plans or lists of fears. I wrote a letter to myself. Emily, you are not ruined. You are not defined by someone else's secret. You told the truth, and you lived. That is enough. I folded it, slid it into an envelope, and tucked it inside my dresser drawer. A future version of me might find it one day, on a harder night, and remember. For the first time since the vineyard, I went to bed without clutching the past like a wound. Instead, I held the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the future could bloom from the very soil that had once betrayed me. The final chapter of that summer didn't arrive with fireworks. It came on a quiet Saturday morning in late August, when the air in Oregon finally turned cool enough to hint at fall. I woke before sunrise, restless, and found myself staring at the garment bag hanging in the corner of my room, the dress I had worn, the costume of a role that never belonged to me. For weeks, I had let it hang there like a ghost. I told myself I'd decide later whether to sell it, store it, or burn it in some dramatic backyard ritual. But that morning I knew. I unzipped the bag, ran my hand down the smooth fabric one last time, and folded it carefully into a box. Then I wrote a note on top, for someone else's new beginning. I drove it to a local charity shop and left it on the donation bench before I could change my mind. On the way home, I stopped at the farmer's market. Stalls lined the square with baskets of peaches, tomatoes, and jars of honey. People recognized me. Of course they did, but the stares were softer now, less cutting. A few nodded. One older woman pressed a sunflower into my hand and whispered, "You're stronger than most." I smiled and thanked her. For once, I believed the compliment might be true. School started again the next week. My classroom buzzed with fresh notebooks and restless energy. On the board, I wrote our first theme, Truth in Stories. My students groaned playfully, already guessing the reading list, but I only smiled. They didn't know how personal the words were to me. Maybe one day I would tell them. Or maybe I already had, without saying a thing. Joshua's name faded from daily conversation. The church announced he had stepped down from leadership to focus on personal healing. Some praised him, others muttered, but gradually the noise moved on. In a town hungry for stories, there was always another headline waiting. What remained was quieter. The stillness after storms. The way my parents' porch light looked warmer when I came home late from school. The way Claire laughed when I finally agreed to try the pottery class she begged me to join. The way I slept through the night without dreaming of cameras or whispers. One evening, I walked back to the vineyard. The staff let me wander the empty terrace. The arbor still stood, though the eucalyptus garland had long since been composted. I touched the wood, not as a mourner but as someone reclaiming ground. This place had held my heartbreak, yes, but it had also held my courage. I pulled out my phone, opened the video of my vows that weren't, and watched myself again. The wind caught my hair, my dress glowed ivory against the green, and my voice rang out steady. I'm not just a bride today. I'm a witness to the truth. For the first time, I didn't flinch. I smiled. I pressed delete, not because I regretted it, but because I no longer needed proof. The truth had already done its work. As the sun dipped low over the vines, I whispered a new vow, one not meant for a congregation, or a family, or a camera. Just for me. I will not live as a shadow. I will not trade my voice for anyone's approval. My life is mine, and that is enough. The wind carried the words away, and I let them go. Walking back to my car, I realized something simple. My wedding day had not been the end of my story. It was the beginning of the one I was always meant to tell. And though I drove home alone, I felt less alone than I ever had before.